Welcome to Lesson 28.3, Reproduction. In this lesson, we'll compare asexual and sexual reproduction, contrast internal and external fertilization, describe the different patterns of embryo development in animals, and explain how terrestrial vertebrates are adapted to reproduce on land. All animals must reproduce, or their populations and species become extinct. This vital function is made possible by interactions among virtually all body systems. Many invertebrates and a few chordates can reproduce asexually in various ways. Some cnidarians divide in two. Some animals reproduce through budding, which produces new individuals as outgrowths of the body wall. Females of some species, such as the whiptail lizard shown, can reproduce asexually by producing eggs that develop without being fertilized. This process is called parthenogenesis. This means of reproduction occurs in some crustaceans and insects, but very rarely in vertebrates. Asexual reproduction requires only one parent, so individuals in favorable environmental conditions can reproduce rapidly. Since offspring produced asexually carry only a single parent's DNA, they have less genetic diversity than do offspring produced sexually. Lack of genetic diversity can be a disadvantage to a population if its environment changes. Sexual reproduction involves meiosis, the process that produces haploid reproductive cells, or gametes. Gametes carry half the number of chromosomes found in body cells. Typically, male animals produce small gametes called sperm, which swim. Females produce larger gametes called eggs, which do not swim. When haploid gametes join during fertilization, they produce a zygote that contains the diploid number of chromosomes. Sexual reproduction maintains genetic diversity in a population by creating individuals with new combinations of genes. Because genetic diversity is the raw material on which natural selection operates, sexually reproducing populations are better able to evolve and adapt to changing environmental conditions. However, sexual reproduction requires two individuals of different sexes, so the density of a population must be high enough to allow mates to find each other. In most animal species that reproduce sexually, each individual is either male or female. Among annelids, mollusks, and fish, however, some species are hermaphrodites, which mean that some individuals can be both male and female or can convert from one sex to the other. In some species, individuals can produce eggs and sperm at the same time. Usually these animals don't fertilize their own eggs, but exchange sperm with another individual. Some species, such as the clownfish, may change from one sex to the other as they mature. A number of invertebrates have life cycles that alternate between sexual and asexual reproduction. Parasitic worms and cnidarians alternate between forms that reproduce sexually and forms that reproduce asexually. Parasitic worms, such as blood flukes, mature in the body of an infected person, reproduce sexually, and release embryos that pass out of the body in feces. If the embryos reach fresh water, they develop into larvae and infect snails, in which they reproduce asexually. Then the larvae are released, ready to infect another person. Many cnidarians alternate between two body forms: polyps that grow singly or in colonies, and medusa that swim freely in the water. Here is an example of the life cycle of a jellyfish. In these jellyfish, polyps produce medusas asexually by budding. The medusas then reproduce sexually by producing eggs and sperm that are released into the water. After fertilization, which occurs in the open water, the resulting diploid zygote grows into a free-swimming larva. The larva eventually attaches to a hard surface and develops into a polyp that may continue the cycle. In sexual reproduction, eggs and sperm meet either inside or outside the body of the egg-producing individual. These alternatives are called internal and external fertilization. Many aquatic animals and nearly all terrestrial animals reproduce by internal fertilization. During internal fertilization, eggs are fertilized inside the body of the egg-producing individual. Invertebrates that reproduce by internal fertilization range in complexity from sponges to arachnids. The eggs of sponges and some other aquatic animals are fertilized by sperm released by others of their species and taken in from the surrounding water. In many arthropod species, males deposit sperm inside the female's body during mating. Some fish and amphibians and all reptiles, birds, and mammals reproduce by internal fertilization. In some amphibian species, males deposit sperm packets into the surrounding environment. Females then pick up these packets and take them inside their bodies. In many other chordate species, males have an external sexual organ that deposits sperm inside the female during mating. Fertilization occurs only in sexual reproduction. Among animals that reproduce sexually, the egg can be fertilized either outside the body or inside the body of the egg-producing individual, which is usually identified as the female of the species. A wide range of aquatic invertebrates and vertebrate species reproduce by external fertilization. In external fertilization, eggs are fertilized outside the body of the egg-producing individual. Invertebrates with external fertilization include corals, worms, and mollusks. These animals release large number of eggs and sperm into the water. Gamete release is usually synchronized with tides, phases of the moon, or seasons so that eggs and sperm are present at the same time. Fertilized eggs develop into free-swimming larvae that typically develop for a time before changing into the adult form. Chordates with external fertilization include most non-vertebrate chordates and many fish and amphibians. In some fish species, such as the wrasse shown, males and females spawn in a school, releasing large numbers of eggs and sperm into the water. Other fish and many amphibians spawn in pairs. In these cases, the female usually releases eggs onto which the males deposit sperm. After eggs are fertilized, the resulting zygote divides through mitosis and differentiates. This development occurs under different circumstances in different species. The care and protection to developing embryos also varies widely. Most newborn mammals and newly hatched birds and reptiles look a lot like miniature adults. Infant body proportions are different from those of adults, and newborns have more or less hair, fur, or feathers than adults have. But it is pretty clear that a newly hatched snake is not going to grow up to be something totally different, such as an eagle. As most invertebrates, non-vertebrate chordates, fishes, and amphibians develop, they undergo metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is a developmental process that leads to dramatic changes in shape and form. Many aquatic invertebrates have a larval stage which looks nothing like an adult. These larvae often swim or drift in open water before undergoing metamorphosis and assuming their adult form. Members of some phyla, such as cnidarians, have a single larval stage. Other groups, such as crustaceans, may pass through several larva stages before they look like miniature adults. Insects may undergo one of two types of metamorphosis. Some insects, such as grasshoppers and the bugs shown, undergo gradual or incomplete metamorphosis. Immature forms or nymphs resemble adults, but they lack functional sexual organs and some adult structures such as wings. As they molt several times and grow, nymphs gradually acquire adult structures. Other insects, such as butterflies and the ladybugs, undergo complete metamorphosis. Larvae of these animals look nothing like their parents, and they feed in different ways. Larvae molt and grow, but they change little in appearance. Then they undergo a final molt and change into a pupa, the stage in which an insect larva develops into an adult. During the pupal stage, the entire body is remodeled inside and out. The adult that emerges looks like a completely different animal. If you observed a very small grasshopper that closely resembled a large grasshopper, would you identify it as a nymph or a pupa? It would be a nymph because grasshoppers undergo incomplete metamorphosis, which doesn't include a pupal stage. The caterpillars of monarch butterflies form a chrysalis in which they develop into their adult form. What developmental stage is the chrysalis an example of? This is the pupal stage. Amphibians typically undergo metamorphosis that is controlled by hormones. This metamorphosis changes amphibians from aquatic young into terrestrial adults. Tadpoles, such as the ones shown here, are one type of amphibian larva. What chemicals control metamorphosis in arthropods and amphibians? Hormones control metamorphosis in both arthropods and amphibians. Animals' care of their offspring varies from no care at all to years of nurturing. Most aquatic invertebrates and many fish and amphibians release large numbers of eggs that they completely ignore. This reproductive strategy succeeds in circumstances favoring populations that disperse and grow rapidly. Other animals care for their offspring. Some amphibians incubate young in their mouths, on their backs, or even in their stomachs. Birds and mammals generally care for their young. Maternal care is an important mammalian characteristic. The bond between mother and young is often very close, as the pandas shown. Males of many species also help care for the young. Parental care helps young survive in crowded, competitive environments. Typically, species that provide intensive or long-term parental care give birth to fewer young than do species that offer no parental care. Chordates first evolved in water, so early chordate reproduction was suited to aquatic life. The eggs of most modern fish and amphibians still need to develop in water, or at least in very moist places. As some vertebrate lineages left the water to live on land, they evolved a number of new reproductive strategies. These strategies now enable the fertilized eggs of many terrestrial chordates to develop somewhere other than in the body of water. Reptiles, birds, and a few mammals have evolved amniotic eggs in which an embryo can develop outside its mother's body and out of water without drying out. The amniotic egg is one of the most important vertebrate adaptations to life on land. An amniotic egg contains several membranes and an external shell. Although it is waterproof, the egg shell is porous, allowing gases to pass through. The shell of a reptile egg is usually soft and leathery, while the shell of a bird egg is hard and brittle. The yolk sac is a bag-like structure that contains a yolk that serves as a nutrient-rich food supply for the embryo. The chorion regulates the transport of oxygen from the surface of the egg to the embryo and the transport of carbon dioxide, the product of respiration, in the opposite direction. The amnion is a fluid-filled sac that surrounds and cushions the developing embryo. It produces a protected, watery environment. The allantois stores the waste produced by the embryo. It later fuses with the chorion and serves as a respiratory organ. Mammals have evolved various adaptations for reproducing and caring for their young. The three groups of mammals, monotremes, marsupials, and placentals, differ greatly in their means of reproduction and development, but all nourish their young with mother's milk. Reproduction in monotremes, such as the echidna, shown here, combines reptilian and mammalian traits. Like a reptile, a female monotreme lays soft-shelled amniotic eggs that are incubated outside her body. The eggs hatch in about 10 days. But like other mammals, young monotremes are nourished by milk produced by the mother's mammary glands. Female monotremes secrete milk not through well-developed nipples like other mammals, but through pores on the surface of the abdomen. There are only 5 species of monotremes, 4 of which are spiny echidnas similar to the one shown. Marsupials, such as the kangaroo shown, bear live young that usually complete their development in an external pouch. Marsupial young are born at a very early stage of development. Little more than embryos, they crawl across their mother's fur and attach to a nipple in her pouch, or marsupium. Inside the marsupium, the young spend months attached to a nipple. They continually drink milk and grow inside the marsupium until they can survive independently. Marsupials bear live young and have external pouches to hold their young. Placental mammals, such as the harp seal, are named for the placenta, which allows nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and other waste to be exchanged between the embryo and the mother. The placenta allows the embryo to develop for a long time inside the mother and allows it to be born at a fairly advanced stage of development.